So I want to close by giving you 3 possible next steps, trusting you to discern what the Spirit has for you. The first step is grieve. This is the invitation inwards, toward yourself and toward God in you. Feel what you need to feel. It is not only allowed, but it is necessary. Grief makes space for hope. Weep, lament. We have to point to things and say it shouldn't be that way before we can say it doesn't have to be that way. In 1 Kings, the prophet Elijah, having been rejected and experiencing a major setback, he flees to the desert, where he's so discouraged that he's ready to give up his own life. After his lament, God grants him a nap and a meal. In Cantonese, we have a saying, "Sik zo fan mea," which means literally, have you eaten yet? But it is at its heart, it's a way of saying, how are you? Have you eaten yet? Don't forget to take care of yourself and the God in you, every part of you. The second possible step is gather. This is the invitation together. Remember that we do not walk alone. Stephen reminds us of that in telling the story of God, that we are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses, the ancestors who have gone before us and those we sit among today. Those who gather across the country and around the world to live Jesus' better way. We remind each other of the reality of sin in our lives and in our world, and we remind each other of the power of God's Spirit to bring good out of any and every situation. Find your community. It might be your small group, it might be family, it might be trusted friends. Lean into that strength. And third step is go. There's always an invitation outward to follow the Spirit where the Spirit leads. When you're ready, or more likely just before you're ready. And here we return to the question of our series, what does the Spirit look like now? Well, the Spirit looks as it always has, shaping lives to look like Christ and bringing God's flourishing into our world. The Spirit bears fruit that transforms hearts and communities, and it shows up, to paraphrase the Apostle Paul in Galatians 5, in love beyond comfort, in joy despite adversity, peace amidst chaos, patience that withstands the storm, kindness always, goodness that refuses to compromise, faithfulness even in the fire, gentleness that disarms, and self-control that holds strong when everything else shakes. The Spirit proclaims, as Jesus says in Luke 4, good news for the poor, not just for the billionaires. It brings freedom to prisoners, not comfort for private prison owners. It brings sight to the blind, maybe even including the misinformed and the disinformed. It proclaims liberation for the oppressed, those ground down by a white supremacist capitalistic system that pits us against one another just to survive. It announces the year of the Lord's favor, not punishment for those who disagree with you. This is what the Spirit has always done throughout God's story, and so my calling and our calling as a church are still the same: to speak out and live out the good news of Jesus, to be salt and light in a world that is desperate for resilient hope and amazing grace and steadfast love and divine justice. We're called to be representatives of God's government. We're called to defend the image of God in every person, to amplify the voices of the silenced, to welcome the stranger, to offer healing to the wounded and rest to the weary, to stand up for the oppressed and marginalized, and to challenge every injustice as an affront to a just God. We are invited, we are called, we are commissioned to point forward to the day when people of every nation and every tribe will gather at the throne of God to worship. And as John wrote in Revelation, God will dwell with them. They will be His people. God Himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain. For the old order of things has passed away, and we will no longer be wanderers waiting in the wilderness. We will be finally home. That's our calling. Through administrations past, present, and future,